We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Sunday. We had Ed yesterday. Thankfully, he got back and got us on track. Today, we have Eric back with us. He was itching to talk about some of the weird and crazy shit that is going on. Eric, welcome back. And you had one particular thing you wanted to address right off the top. And I hadn't heard this confusion before, but tell the folks what you were
Well,
telling me.
well, thanks for having me back on. And the thing we were talking about right before we started recording was this idea that I'm seeing it in my comments, I've seen it in my lives, and in other people's videos even talk about this idea of Joe Biden stepping aside and making Kamala Harris the next president for, till January 20th. And I've seen some people actually seem to think that this would be a great idea, not because she should be president or it should get something done, because it would somehow give her like 4 more years.
Yeah, that's
Like it would
ridiculous.
start the clock over, and it doesn't work that way. It People just don't understand. They don't understand it, and they're like, "Oh well, she's president. Presidents serve 4 years." To them, it makes sense. And I haven't seen a lot of people, but I've seen enough that it's like, no, that's not how it works. Um, And if maybe there was a favorable House and Senate where, you know, Joe Biden maybe didn't want to attach his name to some things, but Kamala would, maybe then. But
Yeah.
with Republicans in control of the House, nothing's getting through, nothing's getting done. She would only be president for 9 weeks. The only benefit I've been seeing, and I did a TikTok on it before we started recording. Well, I guess it'd be yesterday now, as this is airing. But I said the only benefit we could do with it, I could see with it, is this idea that it would get the idea of having a woman president out of the way.
True.
And they
True.
could say, that's the only benefit I see, is that we could now say, well, we've had one. And even if it was a short period and if nothing bad happens, we could point to it down the road and say, well, we've had a woman president before. We can do it again. It's not that big a deal.
But
That's
be,
the only benefit I'm seeing.
but because it's a woman, they would discount it anyway. Well, yeah, she was president for 9 weeks. Yeah, they would discount it somehow. There was really no benefit in Kamala
That's
taking over and Biden stepping down. Biden got his 4 years in. He's looking at his legacy. He doesn't want to be the second president in history to resign his post. He doesn't want to be the one after Richard Nixon to do it. He should ride it out, do whatever he's going to do, and then we go into the world beyond, and that we have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah, the world beyond is going to be interesting, but as you and I both have talked about in our varying TikToks, that they're going to be too busy fighting amongst themselves. They're not going to get anything accomplished.
No,
It could be horrible, but more than likely, it's not going to be nearly as bad as it could be
no.
because they're inept.
Well, and the thing is, in the House, they had a slim margin this session, and they're probably going to even have a slimmer margin. They've got a lot of they're doing dumb shit like Matt Gaetz resigns, and now they've got to get a now they've got to get somebody in there new in a special election. Donald Trump is plucking people's out of the House to be on his cabinet. Anything could happen in those situations, and when you've got a 4 or 3 seat margin, that can change very quickly, and that would be a fly in the ointment of the whole Republican situation. But we saw what they accomplished in the last 2 years in the House. The only thing they accomplished was with the help of Democrats. So while the Democrats don't have the majority, they certainly have some power.
Oh, they've got a lot of power. Um, and I saw, and somebody in my live, one of the last nights said Democrats shouldn't do anything to help them. Not even pass the debt ceiling and just let it all collapse and give the Republicans the blame. And as far as the debt ceiling goes, I said then basically, we don't want to do that because our government has been borrowing money for hundreds of years at this point. We don't want to piss off the creditors that we have and where we get our money and pay even more interest or not be able to borrow to do the things we need to do. that would kill us as a country. We can't do that. As
Not to
much as we may want to give them the blame for a lot, we have to do some things.
Well, and not to mention the fact that not only do we not want to just give them the blame and piss off other countries, in the process of doing that, you would harm a lot of innocent people, people like us that would might be affected by the country being closed down, and that's kind of a bullshit thing to do to spite the Republicans by hurting all of us. That's a Republican move. That's not a Democratic move.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like there's just no benefit. Now,
Oh,
not as far as like not shutting the government down or whatever, if they can't agree to on enough of a budget to keep the government open, you know, Democrats have a lot of power to keep the government open and keep funding for everything where it is and have nothing go away
yeah,
because they can bring their 216 votes or whatever they're going to have in the House and go, we'll pass it through. We'll help you get it through the House. We only need one or two.
yeah.
Just keep it the same, kick the can down the road 2 years, and there'll be no problems.
Yeah, the real power is in the leverage, not in the action. I've always said this before. When you're in a negotiation and you make a threat to somebody that if you don't do this, this is going to happen. Once you make it happen, then you lose all power. That leverage and the fear of the unknown is where the strength is. And that's hopefully what Hakeem Jeffries and the members of the House would use. And they would push them to the limit and get things as normalized as possible, as opposed to just bending over for Republicans. We saw what they did in the last 2 years with a slim margin. They still have a slim margin. They're still going to have the same problems because the Republican Party is still splintered. They're divided. They can't agree on anything. We see it now with them fighting every day over anything from nominees to policies. They're a fucking mess.
Oh, they're a huge mess. And one of the things I saw, I don't know if you saw it, I think it was by the New York Times. Were talking about, they talked to some members of the House, and I don't remember any names that were mentioned, but there's several Republican members of the House that said they would join Democrats to prevent the House from going on recess.
Right.
And because this whole thing on the recess appointments, if the Senate doesn't agree to recess, but the House wants to recess, they think Trump can say, "Well, you're out for 2 weeks. Come back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, and make recess appointments." Because the Constitution says if both houses don't agree about going on recess, the president can make that decision. Well, they want to do this, and basically, some Republican members of the House said, "Yeah, we'll block any attempt to go on recess in the House, point blank. Democrats will filibuster it in the Senate. No recess appointments."
Well, and the thing is, a lot of normal Republicans don't want some of these nominees approved because they're going to cause problems. They're going to make them look foolish, and it's just not going to wear well with them. So there are plenty of Republicans that don't want a Matt Gaetz or Tulsi Gabbard or whatever in there, and so it won't be just the Democrats pushing back.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't think Tulsi Gabbard gets out of the Senate. I don't think she gets confirmed. Not when she was put on a TSA watch list. Um, because I heard that uh
Yeah,
Friday sometime that
yeah.
it came out that she was put on a TSA watch list for being a foreign agent or something like that. Not entirely sure.
Well,
Might
what
have
they're
that wrong as far as what the reasoning was.
Well, what they were worried about is that her trips overseas to certain areas and also interacting with other world leaders like Assad and Syria, that's a red flag right there. So for that reason, she was put on a watch list for a time, and then she bitched about it and got taken off of it. But the thing about it is if you've got somebody who's going to be your head of national security, do you really want somebody who's been on a watch list or has had a red flag up? I mean, can't you pick somebody better than that? It's like putting Matt Gaetz in charge of a group of troubled teens. It just doesn't make fucking sense.
Exactly. And He's got a lot of picks like that. You got Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, who was under investigation by the Attorney General for all sorts of stuff involving underage girls and paying them for sex and all sorts of things. You got Linda McMahon for Department of Education, and find out now that once she's been nominated, apparently she served 1 day on the Connecticut Board of Education or a couple days, something like
Yeah.
that, had to resign in disgrace because she lied about having an education degree. She doesn't have a degree in education.
Right.
She got an education certificate in the 60s and has a degree in French.
Yeah. Well, she's got another problem
He keeps
too.
picking these dumb people that aren't even close to qualified.
Well, and that's not even the worst problem with Linda McMahon. Linda McMahon, I don't know if they're in the middle of a court case or they were in a court case, but in the 80s, in the WWE, of which she was one of the founders with her husband Vince, there was a problem with one of their employees abusing young boys or young men. And there was a whole big thing about it. And she was accused, as well as a lot of people in the WWE, that they knew about it and did nothing. So that's the stupid bitch you want to put in charge of the education department. Yeah, I think she's going to have some problems too.
I mean, if that's the qualification to be in charge of the Department of Education, when she withdraws her name or doesn't get confirmed by the Senate, maybe Donald Trump should nominate Jim Jordan.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a coach. He'd be perfect. The thing about Matt Gaetz, when he pulled back out of the nomination for the attorney general's job, I'm wondering if he thinks that'll keep the rest of the information that's coming out under wraps. I don't think it is. That's too juicy. That's too salacious. As more information comes out, we will know everything about Matt Gaetz. And I've said this before too. I said, what do we do to fight back? And there's not much we can do other than let them burn themselves down. And people like you and I stand back and take pot shots and try to somehow control the uh, court of public opinion, or at least add to it. We've got to expose these people and do what the Republicans did: shout from the mountaintops over and over again, pedophile group of people that Donald Trump is putting in position, and keep saying it and keep saying it, because we found out you can't just say something to people and then have them retain that. They've got to be barraged with this shit in order to remember it and to understand it and make them believe it's real. That's what I feel like our job is now. Is we've got to be talking and talking a lot and keep saying the obvious shit so people grasp it.
That's a big chunk of it is going to be pointing out all of the egregious shit, the bad picks, the pedophilia, all of it. But beyond that, the other thing we have to do is point out what can and actually can't happen,
Right.
and try to just reel in some expectations when people are going off the rails. Like, they don't have the votes in the House and the Senate to pass any amendments, so there's going to be an election in 2 years. That's coming. It's going to happen. There's nothing they can do to stop it. Like, you can't, like, executive orders can't override amendments. And as people start freaking out about Trump having all of this power that they perceive, we have to also remind people what can't happen,
Well,
because
yeah.
some of the stuff that they say they're going to do either can't or won't.
Well, that's the thing that troubles me the most is when Donald Trump says, "I'm going to deport 18 million people. I'm going to do tariffs. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that." Sure, that sounds terrible, and he may attempt to do all those things, but we know he's incompetent. And if we go back to the first term, he didn't get a lot of these things done because he just doesn't have the support. And I firmly believe that Republicans at this point see him as a liability once he's president, because he got them what they needed: the presidency and the House and the Senate. But after that, everything he does is crazy, and now it's all on them. And anything he does and fucks up will stick to them like glue. So they're going to have to put up some guardrails. Otherwise, it's political suicide.
Oh, exactly. And I've been talking about this idea on my live, and I think I might have talked about it with you at one point. If he gets too far over the deep end, there is a chance they impeach and remove him
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
if it gets bad enough, but at the same point, I said, um, if you're JD Vance and things got bad enough that you just watched your own party impeach and remove their president, who's very popular, who's got 35% of the Republican base guaranteed that if he's behind it, so are they,
Right.
and they kick him out, you're walking a tightrope.
Well, the good question here is
You're walking that line.
where is JD Vance? Where the fuck is he? You haven't heard from him. You see Donald Trump out with Elon Musk and all these other people, have not seen JD Vance. What's up with that? I don't think they get along because they have similar tendencies, and Donald Trump doesn't want him to have any spotlight. And JD Vance is a guy who loves the spotlight. There might be trouble in paradise, as there probably will be with him and Elon, too. Donald Trump doesn't hold on to friends or acquaintances very long once they get to know him.
No, and he doesn't. And what I think you're going to see with JD Vance is after the inauguration, after the big celebration day of, you are rarely going to see JD Vance except for the big moments when he has to be there. Things like the State of the Union,
Right.
things like that where he has to be in the same room. You're not going to hear a peep out of JD Vance until it gets close to that 2028 election, and he's going to try to sneak in and run potentially if he chooses to run for his own term.
Right.
But Donald Trump's not going to let him near the spotlight, not going to give him anything, and you won't hear from him until something comes up where he has to be involved. And especially with them not having a 50-50 Senate, you won't even hear about him running the Senate on a day-to-day basis
No.
unless something happens and he's not there for some big vote or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about Donald Trump's first term. What did Pence do? The only thing Pence did is certify the election in 2020, and they wanted to fucking kill him. So, if I'm JD Vance, I may want to keep my head low. You do something that pisses off Donald Trump, that could be fatal.
Yeah, exactly. That was about the one thing that you saw him at. And then, you know, basically sitting there for the joint sessions of Congress when when he was behind the president, like for the State of the Union. That's about all you ever heard from Mike Pence.
Right.
And you're going to have the same thing with JD Vance. People are going to, when he goes to run for his own term, assuming he does, people are going to go, JD who?
Yeah.
Who are you again? You were the VP?
Yeah. They're going to say the same things they said about Kamala when she decided to run. Well, we don't know much about him. He's a little weird. And then, the big difference between JD Vance, if he runs 4 years from now, is that Kamala was running, benefiting from the success of Joe Biden's term. If everything goes as planned, things are going to go to shit. JD Vance may not even get the nomination because they're going to realize we need a fucking change. And this guy's got the stink of Donald Trump on him.
Yeah. And normally in politics, if the vice president from a term limited president or a president that's not running is running, a lot of times there's not a primary challenger.
Right.
Typical, same with an incumbent president. You
Right.
typically don't primary an incumbent, first term president.
Right.
So JD would probably get the nomination right off the bat. But if things are bad enough, you could see several Republicans jump in and go, "Oh shit, we got to change something because this ain't going to work. We're not
Yeah.
going to, it's going to be a landslide if we're not careful for the Democrats."
Well, going the way it's going to go and the plans they have, like tariffs and deportation, just those two things promise to crash the economy. And since the economy is the most important thing to most voters, that's going to be problematic for the Republicans. They're going to have to somehow convince people, yeah, we fucked up the last 4 years, but it's going to get better. I mean, Elon Musk even said it's going to be rough at first, but it'll get better. Well, that's coming from the guy who bought Twitter at $44 billion and it's now worth $10 billion. That's coming from the guy who owns at one time the most popular app in the world, and now people are running away from it in droves. So I don't know that I trust Elon's judgment at this point. I don't think he's the smartest guy in the world.
No, he's not. I don't even know if he's the smartest guy in any room that he's in right now
Yeah,
with, and, and he's in a lot of rooms with Donald Trump. That's saying something.
yeah,
Um, but Elon isn't going to be part of the government for very long. I think him and Donald are going to butt heads. They've
yeah,
got some ideas of how they're going to do this government efficiency stuff, but a lot of it's going to get challenged in court, and it's not going to go the way they think it will. And I just don't think it's going to work. Like, one of the things they want to do is they want to just say, okay, no more remote work. Everybody return to the office if you're a federal employee. And they said, I think there's 2.3 million people that are working remotely for the federal government, something like that. And Elon said in a press thing, well, we think at least 25% of them will quit and we just won't replace their roles.
yeah,
That's 500,000 plus
yeah.
out of the, jobs gone. And they want to talk about how they're going to be a jobs economy and great for the economy and all this shit.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they attempt to do this shit or if they will attempt it. I mean, that's one thing about Donald Trump. He makes a lot of claims. I'm going to build a wall. Mexico's going to pay for it, but never did it. He's too busy playing golf. He's not a guy that really strategizes. He's going to count on the people around him. Unfortunately, the people around him don't always agree. So it's a bunch of dog paddling in the middle of the fucking ocean and getting nowhere. Not to say that some bad things won't happen or some bad decisions won't happen, but those people who think, oh my God, he takes over the 20th, the deportations, the tariff, everything happens all at once. We're going down the tubes. It's not going to be like that. It's just not, because there is a process to government, in spite of the fact that Donald Trump is the president. He claims he thinks he's the king, and some Democrats believe him. Well, fucking believe him. He can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. On the deportations, uh, I've got two different theories as to what could happen, and one of them came courtesy of our friend TJ the plumber.
Oh, okay.
And TJ said he'll probably deport 50,000 people, call it 50 million,
Yeah.
and call it a day. And his faithful will cheer and believe him. The
Yeah.
other thought I had is along the same vein, and that's where TJ threw his comment in my live was, I said, odds are he's going to come out and say, we got all these great policies that are going to go into effect about, what we're going to do about all these criminal migrants and all these, illegal people and everything and all his normal rhetoric. He's going to say they got stuff going on, come out
Yeah.
6 weeks later and declare, yeah, all of our policies worked. All of the criminal immigrants are gone, and did nothing. And
Right.
because people are going to look around, not see immigrants committing crimes, they're going to go, wow, it worked.
Yeah. Well, the other option too might be, if they're stupid enough, they'll start the deportation process. The optics will be bad. There'll be backlash like nobody's business. And then I'll say, whoops, okay, yeah, we won't do that anymore. That's typical of Donald Trump. Fuck up and then say he didn't fuck up. But if he does what you just said about saying, yeah, we fixed it, and when he didn't fix it, this is where we need to take a point from the Republicans. We need to start reporting on how many people are coming across the border. How many people are coming across the border every day, and keep pounding on that. Apparently, that's a big issue for a lot of people. And when he comes in, he's not going to change shit about the border. The border's been a problem for every president going back to whenever. It's never changed dramatically either way. Do we have a problem there? Yeah. We had a problem with Biden in there. We had a problem with Trump in there. We had a problem with Obama. We had a problem with Bush and Clinton and all this stuff. So this is a problem that's not going to go away. Not even Donald Trump has the fucking answer. So maybe we need to keep repeating the issues with the border for the next 2 years at least, to hopefully get these people that are scared to death of immigrants to listen.
Maybe. The other thing is, we have found from this, election and how Donald Trump talked about the border this election, you don't even have to use real numbers. You
No,
can just say millions of people flooding it through every hour. They won't care. Doesn't have to be real. You
no.
don't doesn't have to be real numbers. You can say whatever we can say whatever we want and get away with saying any number, and at least some of them will believe us. But people like I'm sure you and me are more akin to using the actual facts and want to give correct information so people actually know what's going on.
Yeah, I have an affinity toward a little bit of integrity. I have a tough time lie. I don't want to lie to people. I don't even want to be mistaken if I have that opportunity. Of course, with the election, everything seemed in line to happen the way I thought it was going to happen. It didn't. I own that. I fell short because I gave Democrats more credit than that, and I probably shouldn't have. I thought the idea that people would vote against Kamala Harris over the Israeli Hamas thing was ridiculous because I thought these young people or the progressive left uh, thought maybe overturning Roe v. Wade was more important because it affected them here in this country and directly affected them. It makes sense that they would worry more about the Roe v. Wade situation than the Hamas Israeli war. Apparently, I was fucking wrong. I don't get it, but okay. At least I know what's important to you.
Yeah, I keep going back and forth on how this election went. And I've said several times, I think part of it was with COVID in 2020, voting was easier. I think that was at least some of the people who didn't vote for Kamala Harris, is voting was easier in 2020.
Yeah, maybe.
Um, you know, some of it with the Israel Hamas war, I'm seeing some creators saying, yeah, they wanted, to protest Joe Biden and the Biden administration's handling of the war. We're not in that war. Same with Ukraine. We don't have boots on the ground. We're not, this isn't like, Vietnam or the Korean War or something. You know, we're limited in what we can do because we're not actively fighting it. It's not
Right.
like Joe Biden can just say, hey, do it or we're invading you. I mean, that wouldn't work.
No.
We are limited by what we can do. He tried.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do too, because effectively, what these people who voted against Kamala Harris have done have pretty much sacrificed the innocent people in Gaza, the Palestinians. They thought, well, we're going to punish Kamala because Joe Biden's genocide Joe. They hand the reins over to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is going to let Netanyahu run roughshod. And they're going to bomb the piss out of him, and a lot of innocent people are going to die. And all these people that thought they were bleeding heart liberals that they were going to save the Palestinians basically set them up for a sacrifice. And I hope they're happy. And I'm sad that it's going to happen. But it's important to know we tried, and those motherfuckers have the blood on their hands.
Yeah, and I think some of them don't believe Donald Trump will actually be that bad about Israel and Gaza, despite the fact that he has said as much. He has said himself they
Yeah.
need to Netanyahu just needs to finish the job and take whatever steps necessary, things like that. They hear his own words and they go, not even his supporters, some of the people on the left go, yeah, he didn't really mean it that way, or he didn't say that. What more do you have to believe when you hear it coming from the guy's mouth?
The only saving point to this might be there is no motivation for Netanyahu to bomb the piss out of him and end this thing. Because once the war ends, he's probably getting kicked out and may very well go to jail. Netanyahu's real motivation is to perpetuate this war, make it go a couple years or 5 years or something, because once it's over, he's fucked. So it's going to be interesting to see what choice he makes. Because once he bombs the piss out of him and wipes out Hamas and the Palestinians, he's got nobody else to fight. Now he's in trouble. So it's going to be interesting to see how Netanyahu actually handles this.
Yeah, I don't know how he's going to deal with that. I mean, it's like you say, he's got no more motivation. I've heard he wants to try to annex the Gaza Strip into Israel,
Right.
and you know, That's going to be a thing. Apparently, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for him
Yeah.
for war crimes, him and the leader of Hamas. It'll be interesting to see how that works. And apparently, oh, it didn't say exactly how they intend to do it, but basically, Tom Cotton, the senator, said, well, if they try to pursue these things because Netanyahu is an ally, we have a right in the charter or something to take whatever steps necessary to free any of our allies. I don't know. It didn't like the way he was saying it didn't make a lot of sense, but basically that he could turn the United States against the International Criminal Court if they go after Netanyahu for war crimes.
Yeah, I don't think that would work. So we're going to go save a war criminal. I mean, at the very least, they're not talking about grabbing him and putting him in jail. They're talking about grabbing him and putting him on trial. And if he's found guilty, then he
Right.
would go to jail. Yeah, that's what Republicans do. They take these little rules and they twist it and turn it to try to uh, support whatever their agenda is. And they do such a poor job at it that they always get kicked in the nuts over it. They always are proven that they're wrong, but they continue and they persist to say, well, this says this code, that means that. And so we're saved. Fuck you. Not even with the power they have in Washington, D.C., are they going to get away from that? Especially when we're talking about a foreign country. They aren't going to do shit with Netanyahu. But at the same time, you know, Putin's been charged. Netanyahu's been charged. So what? What are they going to do? They're going to go into Moscow and handcuff Putin and pull him out of there any more than they are in Israel? I mean, it's almost a symbolic thing more than anything, unless he goes out of the country and they can nab him. But you know, they can say he's been indicted or whatever, but what are they going to fucking do?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah, yeah, I don't know what authority they actually have to go in and do anything about it until, like you said, until they leave the country. It's one of the reasons why Putin doesn't go anywhere,
right,
or you don't find out about it until he's already wherever he's going to be, and it's usually as he's leaving wherever he went to that you hear about it
right,
because he knows he could be arrested, and he doesn't want to deal with that. Obviously. So he stays in Russia. Same with Netanyahu. Netanyahu's going to stay in Israel. The interesting thing will be to see if what'll happen when he is out of power. I don't think he gets an unlimited term. He has a limited term. I just don't know how long. And then once the war's over, they're going to vote him out anyway,
right,
probably.
right. Yeah. How do you think this
So
whole
then what do
thing?
the Israelis do, Rick?
Yeah. I mean, again, the point is, like you said, we don't have boots on the ground. Joe Biden isn't the leader of Israel any more than Joe Biden's the leader of Switzerland or Vietnam or whatever. It's really on those people to run their own country. We got enough problems in our country. And I know people get mad at me for saying it. Well, those poor people. We got a lot of poor motherfucking people in this country. And I'm not talking about being an isolationist, but I'm not going to put an election on something that's happening in another country when we got people starving here and we got people maybe being deported from this country. We got a lot of problems here. I just don't see Donald Trump being able to organize and coordinate all this stuff. He's not that guy. He's a guy that plays fucking golf. And then all the people around him are such goofballs and have their own little agendas. Nobody can agree on anything. I think what we're going to see is an absolute shit show with not a lot getting accomplished.
I agree with you. We're not going to see a lot getting done. They're going to try to do some things, but there's a lot they can't do.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things they're going to try to use to do the things they want to do don't work the way we think they will, or they're going to get tied up in court. And they don't have the votes to do the major changes. They don't have the votes to pass a constitutional amendment to allow Trump to run again. So he's not going to be eligible for a third term. None of that. They just don't have those votes.
No.
You know, it's going to be a lot of talk, nothing getting done. And the things that they can get done are only going to make things worse.
Yeah, and I think, a year in, if he gets anything done and it goes as badly as we suspected, The Republicans are going to be desperate to get rid of that motherfucker. Like you say, they could impeach him themselves. I mean, it kind of happened with Nixon. The Republicans were behind the impeachment there, Democrats too, but they may be desperate to get rid of this guy one way or another. And in this world today, it could be any number of ways. He's had two assassination attempts. They're talking about the 25th Amendment. An impeachment is a possibility. Once he becomes a bigger liability where he's hurting the party, they're going to want to get out from underneath this dumb fucker because they don't want to spend the next 4 years being embarrassed and leaving rubble in his wake.
Oh, exactly. And on that idea of removing him, something I've seen in one or two of my lives and stuff is this idea that some people are saying, well, he just won't leave if they vote him out with the 25th, or if they impeach and remove him in the Senate, that he won't go and he'll just tell the military to do whatever. It's like, no, if they hold trial in the Senate and he gets convicted and they say you're out as president, the minute that happens, and as soon as JD Vance puts his hand on the Bible and takes that oath, the military don't have to listen to Trump anymore. He's out. The minute they vote him out, he's done. He can't, even if he doesn't agree and he wants to stomp his feet and hold his breath and do whatever and throw that little temper tantrum, JD Vance may not turn the military on Donald Trump or anything like that, but they wouldn't listen to him. They would be listening to JD Vance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like he has to agree.
Well, people said, well, what if he just stayed?
They start looking past the.
Yeah, they believe everything that this guy says. They believe everything. Now, like in 2020, when he got beat and he said, what if he just stayed there? Well, then there would fucking be law enforcement there grabbing him by the collar and hauling him out. Because that would be a crime for him not to leave, trespassing or whatever the fuck it was. He would be a security risk, and they would take his ass out of there. That's the thing. Donald Trump may think he's omnipotent. A lot of Republicans might think he's omnipotent, and even some Democrats believe everything they hear. It's just not the case. There's more to it, and not all Republicans are going to stand by all the crazy shit that Donald Trump wants to do. And people will say, well, a lot of them will. But we got half the House and a little less than half the Senate. The Democrats only need a couple of people to kick his ass out in the House, maybe 3 or 4 people in the Senate. So he's not completely safe because not every Republican agrees with this stupid motherfucker.
Exactly. When it comes to passing some of this stuff, like you said, they're only going to have a couple seat margin in the House. So they want to pass something, if they don't have all Republicans, it's not passing. Yeah. They want to, they can't get around the filibuster in the Senate. It ain't passing. They go to, we only need 2 or 3 Republicans tired of his shit to pass a third set of articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. And then, it goes to the Senate again for a trial. They have to hold the trial or they will. And if he's bad enough, they could remove him. It would take 67 total votes, but that only means Democrats need, 24?
Yeah.
Little over half the Republicans in the Senate, something like that.
Right. Well, here's
assuming all Democrats.
The best way I can explain it to people is this. Joe Biden is president for 4 years. We've got 3 separate trials on Donald Trump. There's evidence fucking everywhere. He has lawsuits. There's shit coming out all over the place. We're going to put him in jail. We're going to take him to trial. But in those 4 years, what happens? The Republicans, even though they didn't have the power in the Senate the last 2 years, they stymied everything. They slowed everything fucking down. They delayed, and it fucking worked. So if the Republicans can do that for the last 4 years to Joe Biden with legitimate complaints, legitimate trials, why wouldn't the Democrats be able to do the same thing with the bullshit that Donald Trump wants to do? Here's the thing. The good news is the Democrats can slow everything down and delay it, just like the Republicans. The bad news is that means there will be nothing done in Washington, D.C. for the people of this country. You will have just wasted 4 years of any progress or any help in this country that we could have. Nothing will happen in terms of positivity or bills or anything like that. But the Democrats, just as well as the Republicans, can shut things down, delay, obstruct, do whatever the fuck they want. And I can guarantee you that's what they're going to do. So all Donald Trump maybe accomplished was making sure the government doesn't do fuck all for the next 4 years.
Yeah, and he's probably going to get a tax plan through, um,
Yeah.
which is going to cost us, it's going to bite us in the ass. But here's something, another creator, and I wish I could think of his name. He threw this out there. Speaking of Donald Trump and his tax plan, this tax cut for the wealthy, they can just say we're going to do it, even though economists and budget people and everything say it's going to cost, trillions of dollars, over the next 10 years, et cetera. There's never any question when Republicans are in control going, how are you going to pay for that?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
never hear Republicans asked, how are you going to pay for it? Every time the Democrats come up with any sort of idea, how are you going to cover all that cost? It's too expensive. How are you going to pay for it? And that is rammed down their throats. It doesn't matter what you want to try to do. Even Bernie Sanders with Medicare for all. Widely popular idea on paper until people started talking about the idea of, how are you going to pay for it? We can't afford it. It's too expensive.
Right.
And then once you bring the money into it, and he had to try to back it up, he said it pays for itself. And people shied away from him because they're like, it's not going to get paid for. It's a problem.
Well,
But paying for anything we want to do is only ever a problem when Democrats are in charge or Democrats want to do it.
exactly. I mean, good example is when Donald Trump gave a $2 trillion write-off to wealthy people. People go, "What are you doing? How?" Democrats say, "How are you going to pay for that?" Oh, it'll pay for itself because of this, because of that, because of this, because of that. Well, it didn't. They were fucking wrong, and that's why he had $7 trillion added to the fucking debt. They're always wrong. They just do stuff and say, "Oh, it'll be okay." Just don't bother looking over here. But they always lie. We paid that 2 trillion to the wealthy people, and whatever the wealthy people get in the future under Donald Trump, we will pay for it. Money has to come from someplace, and the only place it's ever come from with Republicans involved is from us. That's the only place it's ever come from.
Exactly. Or their other plans are to, close a bunch of departments of the federal government, fire federal employees, which adds, unemployment numbers, people on unemployment, taking money out of the economy because people aren't working. And they say, oh, well, we saved all that money out of the federal budget from this, and this. So that paid for it.
Yeah, but well, how does that affect us as far as efficiency of the government? There will be services that we may not get because they close things down. I'll give you a good example. They want to shut down the Department of Education, and I know a Trumplefuck that wants to shut down the Department of Education. Only problem is it has to do. One of the main things it does is it funds special needs kids. And this dumb fuck has a wife that is a special needs teacher and has a son that needs special needs. What did you not hear that? Did you not realize that? What the fuck is wrong with you people? So, in that situation, if they shut down the Department of Education, yeah, they make a lot of money, but there's a lot of people that work within that area and work or have children that need that extra help. You know what happens when they don't give those kids the extra help from the Department of Education? You got to pay for it yourself. So if you want your kids to be taken care of properly and get all the things they need, now you get to pay for it yourself. How you like that? How do you like that? Are you going to offset that with tax breaks? Not for the middle class, you're not.
No, exactly. Well, right before we got on here, I was talking about what's his name? Oh, is it Mullins or something from
Jimmy
the
Ray
Senate?
Mullins or some fuck like that. Yeah.
the senator from South Dakota, he
Right.
introduced a bill that would do that. It would get rid of the Department of Education.
Right.
And he said in there, well, there's things that would still happen that the Department of Education does. We're just going
How?
to move them to other federal departments. So loans and grants for college and all that stuff will now be handled by the Treasury. And special needs stuff for students are going to be handled by Health and Human Services. And just, we're going to add stuff to their workload, but then we're going to get rid of the Department of Education because it doesn't do anything.
So you're going to
He said
save
there's like
money.
25.
So you're going to save money by getting rid of the Department of Education, add a heavier workload to other departments, which you're going to have to fund. So how much do you really fucking save?
Well, it's typical business mentality of we're going to give you extra work. We just fired 3 people, but the other 10 on the team got to pick up the slack and we're going to call it a day. And this is the new normal.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That's their whole plan. But they say these things aren't going to go away and they're going to get moved to other departments. But one of the things I talked about in the video I did on it, I'm like, now, okay, everyone's used to going to the Department of Education. You knew exactly how to get your loans. You knew who was going to, all of it was easy enough, right? It had been streamlined. Now you switch it over to the Treasury. They've got to redevelop the wheel,
Right.
figure out how to handle it, how to take over all of this stuff and handle the enforcement now. And now you don't know, who to contact. You don't know how all that works. It changes everything for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was working in businesses, I described that as somebody creating busy work to justify their fucking job. So they want to get rid of the education department, but in the meantime, they want to put Linda McMahon in charge of the education department, a woman who's got a background in professional wrestling, who is a wealthy elite, the thing the Republicans hate, and also has some experience with turning a blind eye to child abuse. Yeah, that's a perfect choice for that. Does a woman? I mean, you got to remember who was the head of the Department of Education back when Donald Trump was the president the first time. It was Becky DeVos, who was just some wealthy woman whose brother owned BlackRock or some shit. So, uh, and she did no good for anybody in that whole process. Do you think she actually gets approved in this situation? She may, as bad as she is, she's not as bad as Tulsi Gabbard or Matt Gaetz. It's weird.
Maybe it depends what else comes out between now and then,
Yeah.
and what comes out when they actually start looking into her. And I've, you know, been talking about how they have some Republican senators even are pushing back against this idea of using private companies to do the cabinet pick background checks instead of the DOJ and the FBI.
Yeah.
So when the FBI background check comes back, depending on how deep they investigate into her, who knows what else comes out that we don't know about yet. That may be the linchpin as to whether or not she gets in. She's not the worst pick, woefully unqualified, but not the worst name he's thrown out there.
No, no. Well, that's the thing is there's a document that Donald Trump's team has to sign about ethics or something like that, and they've refused to sign it. And the question is, why have they refused to sign it? Because until they sign it, nobody's going to share any intelligence or anything with them in this whole transition period. And the premise people are saying is, well, if he signs it, then they have to go through an FBI background check. So the next question is, why does he not want any of his nominees to go through an FBI background check? Now, they're going to have to do the FBI background check because a lot of the Republicans are saying, no, 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 we're not doing that. In fact, is she a senator? Senator Murkowski from Maine, I think. She's a Republican. She said, I won't vote for any candidate that doesn't have an FBI background check. So Donald Trump is pushing real hard to not have these background checks, but I think they're going to get stuck with it in the end. I mean, Joe Biden might even make a directive to say you got to have a background check. Then they're fucked. They got to do it.
Well, Biden, if it's an executive order, that can get overturned the minute he could sign a different executive order. So that wouldn't do anything. Now, they could push something through Congress quick and Joe Biden could sign it.
Yeah.
But that would take some Republicans in the House.
Yeah.
But there is,
Only a few
I
though.
mean, but there's
Only a few
pushback.
Republicans
There's
in
a
the House.
bunch of senators, huh?
Only a few Republicans.
True. But they're saying, right. But there's a bunch of senators that are saying, yeah, why wouldn't we use the FBI to do these background checks? This is dumb. And uh, they've got the intelligence stuff, the counterterrorism stuff. They can dig way deeper than some private company can. But see, Donald Trump's trying to go around all those official channels because he knows there's probably going to be something in at least some of his picks that would get flagged, like Tulsi Gabbard being on a TSA watch list.
Yeah. Or Elon Musk. He's not in for a nomination to anything. I mean, I think it's important people understand this whole department that Donald Trump is talking about putting Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy in. That's not a real department. That's not inside the government. It's outside the government. Donald Trump can't just create a department and put people in charge. That's a congressional thing. So their real power is in advising Republicans in legitimate departments. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that Elon or Vivek Ramaswamy has a good relationship with a lot of fucking Republicans. So they're not going to be an issue. But regarding the FBI, and maybe I'm just irritated by the whole election thing. I've been disenchanted with the judicial system, with the FBI, law enforcement to a certain extent, the Supreme Court, of course, and Congress. What they've proved to us in the last 4 years, there's no fucking teeth. I mean, everybody was scared of these people for a long time because, well, this could happen. What we went through the last 4 years shows us nothing happens to certain people. There is no teeth. There is no justice for us with these people, and there are plenty of people above the law. So, like I say, I've become a little disenchanted with trusting anything with the FBI or the judicial system, especially.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's been kind of disheartening. I mean, if Merrick Garland hadn't sat on his hands for 2 years, Donald Trump would be behind bars. He wouldn't be, the president elect, and a
Right.
bunch of sitting members of Congress would probably also be with him.
Yeah.
And we'd be having an entirely different conversation. But he sat on his hands for 2 years because he didn't want to be political, then turned around by doing so was political.
Yeah.
And you know, I think Merrick Garland for 2 years expected Donald Trump to do what Nixon did,
Right.
and slink off home and hide in disgrace.
Right.
But that's the difference between Trump and Nixon. Nixon didn't have the same personality traits that Trump has, where he needs the adulation of the crowds and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, to coin a phrase, Trump was basically Nixon on acid because he had some similar traits in narcissism and stuff. But the upside for Nixon was he was smart enough to know where the boundaries were and what would happen if he went beyond those boundaries. And he was in a different time too, in the 70s when he was uh, ready to resign. It was a much different situation than we're in now. It's just the Wild West now when it comes to politics. Apparently, you can do fucking anything, say fucking anything, and as long as people that support Donald Trump support him, it doesn't matter if it's wrong or not. So that's why I'm saying, maybe we use that tactic to our benefit. We get loud. We start talking about shit. We start nailing fucking Republicans for the things they do. Don't sit back and be polite. Get up in their shit and expose them for what they are. At least that's what I'm going to do. And for whatever it's worth. And if it works, I don't know. But I got nothing else. That's what I'm going to have to do. Fortunately, I love giving people
Yeah,
shit.
and you know, yeah, and we love listening to it. Um, but the thing is, like, we got to do, we got to point out everything that's going wrong, and then in part, we have to kind of sit back and watch them hit the find out stage.
Yeah.
Some of these people are already finding out. They fucked around. Now they get to find out. Unfortunately, we get to find out along with them.
Yeah. That's the unfortunate thing. We're
And,
going to suffer too.
as the price of everything goes up, as the price of things go up, you know, a lot of creators I'm seeing are saying, yeah, I've started recording what the prices are now, day after the election, a week after the election. And as they go up, we have to just start screaming, my eggs are too expensive. Gas is too expensive. This didn't work. That didn't work.
Yeah.
And, you know,
What we learned from the election is the whole ball game is the narrative, what people think and what people hear. So, as people who do what we do in terms of social media, we just got to get louder, persistent, redundant, whatever the fuck we have to do. We got to keep pounding in dumb fuckers' heads what's going on until they believe it. Do exactly what Donald Trump and the Republicans have done. Call them out for every little thing, whether it's small or big. And if it's small, I can't wait to walk up to a Trump humper when gas has gone up by 50 or 60 cents and say, how's those gas prices now? What's your excuse for that? And hold their feet to the fire and say, you said this, but this is this. What the fuck is going on? This will be the good time for us, or for me anyway, to start getting Trump-la-fucks on the podcast. I can't wait to see if anybody's willing to do that when shit starts going south. I probably won't get any offers to do that, but we need to hold these fuckers' feet to the fire and just nail them every fucking time.
yeah, I'm half tempted to take a page out of. There's a guy that for 4 years has been running around town wearing a "Don't blame me, I voted for Trump" hat. And, I'm sure somebody out there has one that says, "Don't blame me, I voted for Harris," or is going to
Yeah.
come up with one between now and January 20th. Half tempted to take a page out of his book and wear that for
Yeah.
the next 4 years every time I'm out in public.
Yeah. It sounds petty and it sounds childish. And it wouldn't be something I would do normally, but fuck, it worked. So if you're gonna fight, you got to fight by the same fucking rules. Apparently, it's stupid. It's absolutely ignorant. But for whatever reason, it works with 50% of this country. So we've got to put them in their
Well,
place and remind them that they're fucking stupid.
well, the problem is with these people, they don't know how anything works. They don't know
No.
what a lot of this stuff even is. They listen to sound bites, they listen to Fox News. You know, the number of people I'm hearing that have had conversations with someone they know in their own life, man, I can't wait till he gets rid of Obamacare, but they're on the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of stuff.
What?
Not realizing that they're the same thing.
Yeah, it's stupid. And I said something a while back, and then Ed on yesterday's show said something that I hadn't heard, but I find it interesting. With all the things Donald Trump wants to do, the people in the red states are probably going to get hit the fastest and maybe the hardest up front, because the blue states end up funding all the welfare type things that the red states get. And with the blue states, getting pushback from Donald Trump and the Republicans, what if the blue states just said, you know what? We're not going to pay our federal taxes anymore. And I don't mean the people, I mean the state saying, no, you want it to come back to the states for abortion. You want it to come back to the states for education. We'll just keep all the federal money and you can fuck yourself. And then watch how quickly the red states shrivel up and fucking die. So you may want to move to Minnesota.
Well, that's just it. Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be bad because these red states, they don't understand what could happen. They're talking about wanting to cut Medicaid. They want to cut food assistance. But getting into a Republican mindset, they think legitimately that if they deserve it, they're fine, that they won't get touched because it's not going to affect them.
Yeah.
But they do believe the narrative that there's a bunch of people out there that aren't deserving and are going to get kicked off, not realizing that that narrative is being spun about people just like them, that
Right.
they're in the middle of it,
I
that
think
they're
they
going to look around and go, but this or but that.
I think they're under the misconception that they're all on the winning team, the right team, and that all these things that are going to come down are only going to come down on the Democrats and not them. We're on the good guys team, so it's not going to happen to us. Sorry, motherfucker. It's going to happen to you, and it's going to be harder on you than a lot of us in the blue states.
Well, that's part of it. But like, I know some people here in my little town who will look at somebody on assistance, not know their story, but if they're of a certain age or a certain, if they don't see a disability, for example, and they're on food stamps
Yeah.
and, well, they're just not working hard enough. They don't know how many kids, they don't know the situation, they don't know why they're needing any sort of government assistance. It's just they're lazy, they need to do more,
Right.
but then they themselves have whatever reason to be on assistance and go, yeah, but my leg, or I've got my disability, I don't need, I can't work. That's that type of thing. If they don't see the reason, they assume it doesn't exist.
That's one of the most disappointing things I found about America after this election. As well as there's many people that are stupid, more than I thought, and I thought there was a lot. I never imagined 50% of this country or 48% of this country being stupid. But more, and they're racist and misogynistic and anti Semitic and treasonous and all that sort of stuff. But the amount of selfishness in this country truly fucking amazes me. I want what I want. I want it now, and I want all of it, and nobody else can have anything. They don't see the benefit of helping other people and how that helps the whole process, the whole economy. They said, I just want to get mine. It's like with the student loans thing. I paid my loans in the 70s. These kids should have to pay their loans. Yeah, but it's vastly different. You didn't pay shit for loans. I know because I had them. Kids today are paying fucking high prices for loans. They're getting jobs with low pay, and they have housing that's too far out of their fucking realm. Yeah, they're pissed, and they should be pissed. And it's all about selfishness in this country. And I'm fucking tired of it. Come on, there's plenty for everybody. Let's just try to coordinate and try to make everything good for everybody instead of worrying about your little fucking backyard and getting your little garden trolls in a row so that you look special. Fuck people, man. I'm tired of it.
Well, yeah, and part of it is that they're selfish because, like, especially for those that need the assistance and that look down on others that are on it, or when you talk about upping income requirements so more people qualify, or making, when you talk about bringing other people up and making them even, they look at it as like a pie. And there's only so many slices and only so many ways you can slice it. And if you give somebody else something, clearly I've got to give up. They don't realize it's about, giving everybody just an even playing field and making it up, all the same. They don't see it that way. They look at it like a pie, and you're cutting away to give them something. You got to cut away from my slice, my wedge,
Right.
and that's not how it works. But they don't want to see it that way.
It's so childish when you think about it. And I'm embarrassed to say this, but it reminds me of me when I was like 7. Okay. My brother was 6. I was 7. We were pretty close in age. We hung out a lot and we did things. And it was the 60s. So it was a different world. And on occasion, on a rare occasion, my mom would say, you two can split a bottle of pop. And I'd say, cool. And of course, when you're splitting this bottle of pop and you're 6 and 7 or 7 and 6, you're looking right at the lines. You got to make sure it's absolutely even. And if it's a little off, you're going to say, hey, you're screwing me. So we'd pour this. I'd pour the pop, of course, because I was the older one. I'd pour the pop. And it didn't take me long to figure it out because I would have mine and my brother's, and I would pour a little bit in mine, you know? He'd go, "Hey, that's not fair. You got more than I do." I go, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I fucked that up. Here, I'll fix it." I drink a little bit out of mine, put it down, it'd be even, and everybody goes, "That's better." That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing to these fucks. They're acting like they're getting more, but they're taking or even, and they're taking away from them. I did it when I was 7 years old. I should be a fucking bureaucrat. But when I got to be 10 or 12, I thought, that's not fair. I'm not going to do that anymore. That's pretty shitty. But that's what Republicans do right now. They try to make you feel that you're evening up with everybody else, and they're still fucking raping you.
Yeah, exactly. Um, they do that all the time, and they want to cut away from these entitlements. But the common person that votes Republican doesn't understand at all that that's from everybody, you know, and they're gonna feel it, and until they feel it, they're not gonna learn.
Yeah, and that's what I've said all along, and it's sad to believe that, but it seems to be the case. These people in red states, Donald Trump gives them hope and says he's going to do all these wonderful things, which he's not going to do or can't do. But these people believe him. And apparently, for a lot of people in this country, maybe 50% of the people in this country, unless they're bit in the ass, they're not going to realize they're being taken for a ride. And in the process, they will get their asses bit, but so will we. We have to suffer because they're fucking stupid. It's it's honestly not fair.
No, it's not. We're gonna have to suffer right along with them. But as we've talked about, there's gonna be some things they're just not gonna be able to do.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you think
they're
about
not.
the
They're probably.
deportation
They
thing?
may.
Do you really think they're going to build camps and deport 18 million people? It's too expensive. It would take forever to do, and it would crash the economy. Do you really think the Republicans are going to allow that to happen? I just don't think so.
No, I don't think they're going to go that far. I think it's going to be more like the two things we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the smoke
Either
and
they're going to
mirrors.
deport some and claim it's a huge number, or they're going to say it was, uh, you know, we got great ideas. We're going to do all these things without actually saying what they are, being it
Yeah,
very obtuse, and then just, you know, then declare victory. One of the two. Like they're not going to get that many deported. Um, they don't have the numbers in Congress to pass any sort of mass denaturalization thing.
no,
If they were talking about denaturalizing citizens. Well, you either have to go one by one to court and have a court rule on each person individual or small groups or whatever, or you got to pass something through Congress that would somehow change it, and that would all get held up in the courts anyway.
right.
But they
And
just
we
don't have the numbers to do it.
and we know how fast the courts work. It'll be 4 years before it comes to fucking trial and half this shit.
Exactly. I mean, before some of the stuff comes to trial, I may regrow a full head of hair.
Well, that's one of the things I said too, is one of the things that gets on me about this um, election. I thought in 2024 we'd get on the right track and we get things starting to straighten out. And people say, well, I guess we have to wait 4 years. Well, for you, you're a younger man. I'm 64. In 4 years, I'll be 68. I'll be that much closer to the 6 feet under thing. I'm in a fucking hurry now. I want things to change and get better now. So when I get to the point where I'm incapable, irrelevant, or dead, that I can leave here feeling comfortable, things are on the right track. Now, I don't expect to die in the next 4 years, but Jesus, we gotta get this fucking thing moving.
Well, one of the things I've been saying is I think if they even do half of some of the egregious stuff they want to say, and I don't even think they'll be able to get that much done. But if
No.
they do some of the deportations and the tariffs and they crater the economy as bad as it could be, if some of that happens, I've been saying there is a chance if the right Democrat comes in with the right message, something like an FDR New Deal style message, you could end up with the Democrats in control for 20 years and have a transformational
Yeah.
um, presidency.
Do you think that
Now, it
they,
wouldn't be the same person for that many terms.
right? And I don't,
You think what?
well, my wife was saying that when they were talking about potential Democratic candidates in 2028, she was put off by the fact that they didn't mention Kamala Harris. And I think Kamala Harris would have been a fine president. I wish she was going to be president and all that, but I don't see her as a candidate in 2028. Maybe. But don't you think the Democrats really need to start developing and building a candidate or candidates to be running at full speed by 2028? I mean, we had 90 days with Kamala, and they did a pretty good job, but it certainly wasn't enough. So don't we have to start figuring that out now and putting somebody in position, kind of like what they did with Obama at the, you know, when Obama was at the DNC convention and stuff, and they kind of built him after that. We almost have to do that, but then who is it going to be? Some people say Gavin Newsom. We don't know what's going to be up with Gavin Newsom in 4 years. I think it's safe to say at this point the Republicans are going to come out with a white guy, given the racism and the misogyny in this country.
Oh,
But who's it going to be? That's the interesting thing.
well, I think you're right. We got to come up with somebody, but I've been saying for a while, Democrats should only probably have three or four at most
Yeah,
going into the primary season. Although Democrats are a little better about the primaries than Republicans.
right,
The reason Donald Trump got in part was because they had such a diluted field. 30% was consistently going for Trump and everybody else was splitting the rest of their vote.
right.
The worst rose to the top. And I don't want to see that happen to the Democrats, but I think they've got good candidates all the way around.
Yeah, they certainly
Maybe it's
do.
not a thing. Um, but whoever it is should start, especially if the economy starts going, should start be talking now. Again, I'm thinking something like a New Deal type message, but they got to get somebody going now.
Well, somebody has to establish themselves as a leader, because that's what Donald Trump did. As fucked up a leader as he was the loudest voice. He was the leader, and the dumb fucks followed him like the snakes with the Pied Piper. We need somebody, doing it right and being honest and being truthful. But we need somebody as loud and proud as that, because apparently that works. We saw that in the last election. The question is, are the Democrats capable of that? They always look at themselves as above it all, or they're going to take the high road. Uh, and it's fine to take the high road, but apparently you need to be more of a pro wrestler to win this than a politician used to be. And I'm not saying that it has to be goofy or crazy, but we have to see somebody that's truly strong. Because as much as Donald Trump is a weak motherfucker, the perception with a lot of people is that he's strong. So we need to understand that people want strength in the president. So we need to come with somebody in the Democratic Party that can exude that.
Yeah, and maybe potentially if they only ran a primary with one or two, they could start to get that idea from the primaries going of strength. And it's going to be a little easier to show strength if your opponent is JD Vance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no, that you're right. They need to come up with somebody that is a strong candidate who shows strength and is able to kind of rally people around. And that's why I would say like an FDR style New Deal approach would get a lot of people and would probably pull from the Republicans. But
Absolutely.
the thing I want to say is the Democrats also need to, in a way, say fuck trying to win over Republicans and stuff. Quick shift into the right and just run the campaign they want to run and go from there. Kamala Harris kept shifting farther right, brought Liz Cheney along toward the very end. And I think that hurt her some too.
Well, yeah, I think she thought she had all the Democrats, so she thought she'd try to grab some Republicans. What we found out, she didn't. It didn't work. The Republicans will vote Republican no matter what. Her problem wasn't Republicans. Her problem was the far left. Now, when the far left sees what happens when they fucked around, will they find out and change their style? I don't know. But whoever is coming in for the Democratic Party is going to have to pull in the left side. Had that been the case, let's throw out racism and misogyny just in case. But if Kamala was able to make the left, the progressive left, feel comfortable, she would have won. Because we know there was, well, like when it comes
Oh,
down to it, it wasn't 15 million people that didn't vote. There was like 3 or 4 million people that didn't vote. But even if it's a million, that changes everything. So um, we've got to somehow do exactly what I said the Republicans can't do, and apparently now the Democrats can't do. We got to somehow unify the party because our party is almost just as divided as the fucking Republicans, it appears.
well, yeah, and I think with what we're both kind of on the same page is she thought she had the Democrats all on board and they were all going to vote for her. So she went to the Republicans and she was trying to bring them across. But by shifting right, she lost people on the left. So again, that's what I'm saying. Forget the idea of shifting right and trying to accommodate to
Right.
Republicans. Shift left and bring them along for the ride. If they're disillusioned enough that they're not going to vote for Trump, they're going to vote. If they're going to cross the aisle and consider it, you don't need to shift toward their policies to already gain their vote. You
No.
need to shore up your own house first.
But here's the thing I'm wondering is that if Donald Trump pulls off any of the shit he does and it does crash the economy or make the economy worse, I have to wonder if some of the center left people would be more willing to go further left given the shit show they're currently in. That might allow the party to go a little further left, and the centrist may say, all right, fuck it, yeah, we gotta do something. We're in a bigger hole than we were in the first place, and we got to dig ourselves out. I'm not afraid of going further left than center of left. I think the progressives can be just as bad as the radical right, but after we go through what we're going to go through with Donald Trump and what he does to the economy and the people, we need to correct a little bit. And that might mean for us to go further left than most people thought they'd be willing to do in 2024.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and this might be where we get a Medicare for all single payer insurance option. We finally get a decent raise in minimum wage and more worker protections and all, maybe they drop it down to a 32-hour work week where overtime starts or something. I don't know. Maybe they start doing, maybe they shift all the way to a universal basic income.
Right.
Who knows? But they may have to shift far left or farther left, like you said, to course correct and dig us out of the potential issues. Now, I keep comparing it to the Great Depression and Herbert Hoover's mishandling of the stock market crash
Right.
and the outcomes with FDR, because that's the best example I can think of in history of what we're dealing with. But there isn't a couple advantages that we have now that we didn't have when that happened because we fixed things from then. Like we've got the FDIC, so banks shouldn't close. We've got some social safety nets in place until they fuck them over.
Right.
That'll help. Like we've fixed some things, so it might not be as bad, but it still could be pretty bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to spend a little time talking about the media because I have a feeling that what we do here, what you do on TikTok and what we do in the podcast on TikTok and what some of the other left side people do in social media, I think I think people are going to become more prominent. It was funny after I said on November 5th, I'm not watching MSNBC. I'm not watching any mainstream cable news anymore. They did nothing but lie to us or manipulate us. Why would I want to watch them? And then all of a sudden, I heard this mass exodus from cable news. We're looking at MSNBC losing 38-40%. CNN lost 35% or something like that. There is a mass exodus. And since I was wrong with the election, I want to personally take credit with everybody to making the mass exodus from the media. I said it, they did it. Thank you, guys. Thank you for doing that. But don't you think that makes what we do here, and I'm not talking about us personally, but what goes on social media, that people are going to go more toward that and go away from something that they can't trust in the mainstream media?
Oh, exactly. I mean, if the media would have handled Donald Trump like the real threat he is and how incompetent he is, if they would have, you know, handled him like they would have anybody other than him, because the clown show is good for ratings,
Right.
they wouldn't be dealing with a cutback in ratings and things like that now, and we'd have Kamala Harris as president.
Yeah.
But people are pissed that they didn't do a good enough job handling everything that was dealt with, and they focused on the wrong stuff in favor of keeping it a horse race.
Right.
And yeah, you're going to see people like us on social media, I think, continue to gain a following. Expected my my small following at what it is to drop off. And it really hasn't. It's grown,
Right.
not a lot, not by leaps and bounds, but still, it's grown since I was wrong about the election. And I've noticed like your numbers keep going up,
Yeah.
even though, we got it wrong, because people are tired of the mainstream media.
Well, and I think you probably get this too. I think leading up to the election, people were terrified. Now the election is over, people are terrified. People want to hear some common sense and they want to hear about some hope. I mean, you got to have hope. Otherwise, you just give up. No reason to get up in the morning. And the way I look at things, the way you look at things, you're always looking at the angles. Okay, this is what's being said. What does it really mean? And what does really going to happen? And I think people want to hear that. They don't, and the media does the opposite. They want you terrified. They want you scared because they perceive that as pulling in the audience and locking them in. People are fucking tired of being terrified. People are tired of being scared. They want uh, answers to how we get out of it now that we're in it. And I'm not saying I know everything, but I can look at different angles. You can look at different angles and say, yeah, but this or that or the other thing. And people are just starved for that kind of information because you can't get it on mainstream media.
Exactly. They're looking for, you know, they hear something and they're not quite sure if this is how the government works or that's how the government works or whatever. And they want us to come in and say, well, they don't have the votes in the House and the Senate to change the Constitution. So there will be an election in midterms
Yeah.
in 2 years. Mainstream media is not telling them that. They're saying,
No.
well, they want to, they want to do this, they want to do that. And they're feeding them the sensational idea and the talking point of what they may want to do, but not coming back with, yeah, but realistically, it's not going to happen.
They're kind of
They
like
skip that part of it.
they're kind of like the tabloids. I know my mom used to get all the tabloids, the Inquirer, the Star, and all that stuff, and they put this very provocative title in it. And it might say something like Donald Trump says there's going to be no elections in the midterms. And then they go deeper into it and they try to explain it to the best of their ability. And it really has nothing to do with what the title is. It's all a scare tactic. And they need to go someplace where they're going to at least hear the truth and not somebody trying to fucking terrify them. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm here. I'm a retired guy. I have kids. I have grandkids. I'm not terrified right now. I'm pissed. I'm concerned for a lot of people that are maybe worse off than I am that are going to struggle, people that are friends and family. I'm not scared though, because we've come a long way in all these years. We've gone through some shit. We will go through this shit and it will get better once people realize they fuck themselves.
Exactly. And then, I can't remember the guest you had on who was it like a trained historian. I can't remember what her name was, but I've always been like a student of history. I love history. And I look back at history and go, okay, well, we got through this, we got through this, we got through this. And these things still happen despite everything.
Yeah.
So what can we expect? And that's kind of what I pull on. You know, we we were in the middle of the Civil War. We still had elections. We
Yeah.
were in the
This
middle of World Wars One
a,
and Two. We
a
still had
fucking civil
elections,
war.
and we still had an election.
Yeah.
Every 2 years in, they held them. They held the elections. At least in the Union. I don't know. I don't think they did in the southern states, but they went on without them, and we continued.
Well,
You know, we just do. Things will happen because they don't have the votes to change them. So
yeah,
it's not going to be a thing.
yeah, the end of the world isn't near. I mean, in my lifetime, I've said before and I'll say it again, and I don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 years, so maybe I'll change my mind. But I don't think there was any more turbulent time than the 1960s. I mean, you think about it, the president was assassinated, a presidential candidate was assassinated, black leader Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, they were all assassinated in the 60s decade. We had the Vietnam War. We had war protesters. We had people rioting on campuses, kids getting hurt, kids getting killed at Kent State. There was a lot of turmoil in the 60s, and somehow we found our way out of it. I also think that we may have had some presidents as dumb as Donald Trump, but those were in the days when you didn't hear all these things and they weren't so uh, high profile and boisterous about it. I mean, you look at somebody like Ronald Reagan, who pretty much is responsible for the beginning of the fall of the middle class. That motherfucker wasn't very smart, but he was a smooth talker and he had other people advising him. He didn't do this country any good the entire time he was president. He hurt this country. And I don't know that he's any less dangerous than Donald Trump is now. And I voted for the motherfucker. So figure that. I mean, I was 20.
Well, I was too young to vote for Reagan, but I remember Reagan. Um, and you might be right. He might be as dumb as Donald Trump, especially when it came to politics. But he was also a product of the time he was in.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a smooth talker built around the TV interview and the pre-recorded and all of that stuff. Would he have been nearly as successful now in the 24-hour news cycle with everybody having a phone, everybody having doing what we do?
Right.
Would he have been able to do that? Who knows? But
Yeah,
it worked in the era that he came from. And we
exactly.
survived. We survived Reagan, and we're going to survive Donald Trump. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. But there, as we've talked about, there are some guardrails in place. And the biggest guardrail of all is going to be the Republicans themselves going, oh shit, we need to get reelected.
Yeah, we
Because
fucked up.
as I've said in numerous lives and videos, politicians, if nothing else, love their own power.
Yeah.
And they will fight to keep their own power. And if they think that if they by going too far one way or the other is going to hurt them or their chances of being in power, they're going to vote against it.
Do you agree that what I think is that the Republicans have squeezed as much value out of Donald Trump as they can get, and once he becomes president, there really is no value left in him for the Republican Party, and he becomes a liability because of the stupid shit he says and does?
Yeah, I think you're probably right there that they've gotten enough value out of him. The only thing he might be able to bring them is if he hasn't hurt them enough with his policies and stuff, and the economy is still semi-strong come midterms, he might be able to help them out with endorsements in the midterm elections. But once he can't run in, like going into 28, he brings them nothing because
No,
he can't do anything.
I don't think he'll be
He can't
alive by
run,
then.
and uh, maybe, but what in what condition?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. I wanted to bring one thing up and see what
I
you think
mean,
about
we've had,
this. Go ahead.
sure. Well, I was going to say we've had other presidents that have still been president where we find out afterward that their condition was an issue. Look at Woodrow Wilson. Look at Reagan. We suspect he may have been suffering from dementia by the end of his term, and it was hidden.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is going to have the problem of not being able to hide it. So we'll see what condition he is in by the end of his term.
Yeah. Or by the end of the year for that fucking matter, because he's losing it pretty hard. We're going to come to the end here, but I
For,
wanted to bring something up. I'm going to be curious as to how the Republicans respond to this. Um, the most coveted position, it sounds like, is the Treasury Department. Who is Donald Trump going to put in charge of the Treasury Department? Well, he's picked a guy. He's made a nominee, a guy named Scott Bessent or something like that. You know who he is? You know who Scott Bessent is? He was the second hand or the
I heard,
yeah, he's second. He is George Soros' main guy. So Donald Trump hired George Soros' main guy to handle the Treasury Department. How do you think the Republicans are feeling about that shit? How do you think the Trumplafucks are feeling about that?
could be another pick that doesn't make it out of the Senate, just based on who he's connected to, and
Yeah,
by nothing more. I mean, George Soros has been the Democratic boogeyman for, because the Republicans have used him as a Democratic boogeyman for what, 20 years now? Something
yeah.
like that? Forever, as far as I remember.
Well, and the reason they picked him is because he's pro tariffs and pro maybe deportation and stuff. I'm sure he's a piece of shit, regardless of whether he's with George Soros. People always say George Soros is in line with all the Democrats, and I don't know if that's true. He's a billionaire. I don't trust the motherfucker, regardless of what his political bent is.
Yeah, I don't trust, like, who needs that much money? Realistically, $1 billion.
But
You
but
know,
you can
you
you
don't
can
realize how much that number really is.
yeah, I could take a couple days off. I could take a couple days off if somebody handed me $1 billion. But you know what I'm going to do? In line with what I was talking about, tomorrow when I'm doing TikToks, I'm going to do at least 2 TikToks. Hey, Trump the fucks. Donald Trump's nominating George Soros' main guy. What are you going to do about that, you dumb fucks?
Exactly. And they're going to say, well, clearly he's a good guy. He learned from George Soros. They'll spin it some way.
Oh yeah, they will.
They're going to try.
But I'm going to still shove it down their throat as often as I fucking can. I hope he gets in. I do.
Oh,
I hope he
yeah, it'll
gets
be
in.
interesting. I mean, even the there's not a lot to treasure.
No.
A lot of these picks and these people aren't going to have nearly as much unlimited power as they think they're going to. It's just we needed to talk about it going into the election for what they wanted to do, because that was pointing at more of the character of
Uh,
who they are. But still, like, it's not going to work the way they want it to, and they're just getting dumb and dumber picks all the time.
well, don't you think a large reason why we get these dumb picks is because anybody who might be potentially legitimate to fill those roles don't want anything to do with it after they saw what happened during Donald Trump's term. They either got fired, they got indicted, they got embarrassed, whatever the fuck happened. Nobody came out of the cabinet really benefiting much. They ended up losing a lot. So why would anybody with any future or potential want to even be on the fucking cabinet?
Exactly. I did see his new pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi. She's at least so far the most qualified of any of his picks anywhere. She's at least been the Attorney General for the state of Florida for 2 terms. I mean, she's already up on Linda McMahon. She's already up on Matt Gaetz. She's doing better that way.
Well, she's doing better that way, but she was also the lawyer for Donald Trump during one of the impeachments. She's also an election denier, and she also has a connection to Jeffrey Epstein. So she's a piece of shit, too. The only problem with her over Matt Gaetz is she understands how the game is played. She's just as bad, but she understands how the game is played. So we might be worse off with somebody like her than Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz would just be a goofball, partying all the time, would never get anything done.
Well, one of the things I saw, one of the articles I read about her was saying somebody who had studied her a little more or knew a little more about her had said there's a good chance she won't be into all of the retaliatory um, prosecutions
Yeah.
because she's more normal that way. She won't. Matt Gaetz would have greenlit. Yeah, let's just we're bringing charges against Nancy Pelosi. Go arrest her on the House floor. That kind of stuff. Matt Gaetz would have been on board.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
gal is going to at least not be for stuff like that.
Well, there's one other consideration too about whether Republicans will approve of her. She is a woman. you,
True.
It's funny. This is one thing. I'm going to wrap this up here in a minute. What's funny is when you look at all the people he's appointing to his cabinet, there is one guy that you think would be in one of those appointments. He's a hardcore Trump humper, had a fake girlfriend that he ended up marrying. But I'm talking about Byron Donald, or is his name Byron, or the Donald guy? He's down
Byron
in,
Donaldson or something like that.
yeah, but he's down in South Carolina. He's a senator. He talks shit about Nikki Haley, who's the one that appointed him to the fucking position. So this guy's a goofball. But he has one strike against him. He's black. And you notice all the work that this guy did
Yeah.
for Donald Trump. He's not getting an appointment. Wonder why.
Well, that's the same thing like that one content creator on TikTok, the one African American guy. I can't think of his username that had the MAGA hat on, and he's like, "Well, I love my MAGA friends, and I'm just as much MAGA as you, and they're telling me I'm not welcome at the table anymore. They just needed my vote."
Yeah.
Well, no shit.
There's going to be a lot of that.
He walked smack dab into the point and still missed it.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to come to realize that they were just used. And yeah, the guy I was talking about, he's a representative, not a senator. Um, Byron Donalds. Yeah. Yeah. He fucked around
Yeah,
and found out that we like your support, we like your votes, but you don't get to come to the party. So a lot of people are
exactly.
going to find out that they bought into a pig in a poke, so to speak. They were fooled. They were goofed on. I mean, there's already a lot of things that Donald Trump has claimed. He claimed that he would stop the Ukraine-Russia war 24 hours after he was elected. He was going to say after he took office, he says, I can do it even after I get elected. Well, what are we, 3 weeks out from the election, and that thing's still fucking raging. So nice job, Donnie.
Exactly. Yeah, there's going to be a laundry list of promises made, promises broken. Um, and almost all of them are going to be the same. About the only thing he's probably going to get done is the same thing he got done last time,
Yeah,
which is going to be another tax cut to rich people.
yeah,
And the the sad thing is, I think one of the things that hurt Kamala Harris is going to hurt whoever runs in 2028 is either they're going to have to not campaign on it, or if they do, it could hurt them, or it'll hurt them if they do it. Is if you go on reversing the cuts, even on the wealthiest people, the minute you start talking about raising taxes, people get pissed.
yeah,
And they
yeah.
voted. Some of them that would have voted for you. They could love everything else you're doing, but even if you're talking about raising taxes on people who make more than $1 billion a year, which is like 3 people in the country, oh shit, they're raising taxes. I could be in that tax bracket someday. Oh no.
Well,
It pisses me off. Seriously.
people need to learn a
I know
lesson.
people who barely make 30 grand a year,
Yeah, and they're worried.
and they were worried about Donald Trump, or not Donald Trump, Joe Biden raising taxes on people making over 400K.
Yeah, Yeah.
Man, you
Well,
haven't made over 400K combined in 10 years.
yeah. Well, I think people need to learn a lesson from history. You were young at the time, but uh, there was that famous quote by George H.W. Bush: "Read my lips, no new taxes." And then, of course, there were taxes, and he was a one-term fucking president. So there you go.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It doesn't matter what, tax bracket you're talking about. If you talk about raising taxes, the only way I think you could get by with raising taxes, and Kamala Harris was talking about it, and it wasn't good enough. Is she was talking about cutting taxes on people like you and me and raising them on the upper class, and it still wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I think maybe you need to just say we're going to cut taxes uh, on the middle class. We're going to cut taxes on the middle class. Keep saying that. And then when people say, where are you going to get the money from? You just kind of go, oh, get it for the rich guys. You just highlight the benefit and don't talk about the other one quite as much because, like you say, people are confused, people are ill-advised, misadvised, or misinformed, and you just can't account for stupidity. It's a sad state of this country, but there's a lot of stupid in this country. There's no question about it.
Well, on that, I'm gonna use a quote from the great George Carlin.
Okay.
He said in one of his comedy bits, "There's a lot of fucking stupid people in this country. Just think about it. Think about how dumb the average person that you can think of is. Just think about how dumb that person is. And half this country is dumber than that."
That's very true. Yeah, that's a sad state. Yeah. Well, Eric, we're gonna wind things up here. Of course, we're talking to Eric from Iowa, a regular guest on the program. He's got some great insights. I want to thank you for coming on. Let people know how they can find you on TikTok and YouTube, because if they aren't following you, they should be.
Well, I am on TikTok, YouTube. I am Analytical Iowan, all one word. ANALYTICALIOWAN. I've got it spelled down below if you're watching the video podcast. Um, and if you find me on one or the other, I've got links back to each other. So I try to post all my stuff up on YouTube that I do on TikTok.
Right. I will say this: you've been doing a lot of lives. I've come across your lives. I pop in now and then and watch. But you're doing a lot of lives. Just so people know, I like doing lives too, but I'm not going to be doing a live until like December 1st because I got taken down the last time by the Trumplafucks. I don't understand why they're worse now after the election, after they got what they wanted. But I had TJ and I had Gray Captain out there blocking people. I was blocking motherfuckers, but somehow they got through and got me taken down. So fuck them. I'll be back. I'm going to do a live on YouTube sometime soon.
Well,
That's much tamer.
well, I hope I catch that one when you are live. Because I love watching your lives and being in there, and they're always a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, they are
But I think part
busy.
of why they're worse is they were so geared up. They they were geared and ready and angry and ready for a fight because even they expected to lose.
I
And
think
then
so.
they won, and they don't know how to process it. I think their side fell ass backwards into a complete victory, and they were so ready for a fight. They don't know how to do it. They don't know what to do now because for 2 years they were ready. We were gonna,
Well,
and
I think
now
I
what do
think
they
part
do?
I think part of it too is that they were fighting so hard and they wanted to win, and then they do win. They expect people to be crying and submit and say, you were right all the time. Oh my God. And then you got some clown like me going, fuck you. I'm spitting in your face, you piece of shit. And so they aren't getting the result that they had hoped for, and they don't know what to do with it. And they may be realizing that, oh shit, now we got to actually do something. And they know they're in line for looking stupid again. I mean, this is the whole thing with Republicans. It's all about their egos and building their egos. They follow Donald Trump and they spent their whole lives being failures. And this is their one chance to be a winner. But in the end, they're going to be failures too. And Unfortunately, it's not nice to do in most situations, but I'm going to be here to fucking point it out every time. You're a loser. Here's why you're a loser. Here's how you lost. Fuck yourself.
Exactly. I'm going to be doing what I've been doing, just pointing out where, what they want to do and how they either could do it and what it could mean, or how it's just them talking nonsense because it doesn't work the way they want you to believe it works. They just want you afraid and to give up before they even try.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, Eric, thanks very much. You'll be back again soon. I'm certain of that. For those listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.